Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Berto Willis, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We're going to have a great show for you today. We have a great guest that we're going to bring on a little bit later in the second half of the show, or the second part of the show. I think you are going to love her and love the things that she has to say. But anyhow, I want to get started. Title of the show today is, actually I want to get started real quickly because we've got a full show. Title of the show today is Dr. Alauna addresses coping with COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, we have our coronavirus update. Folks, we have Dr. Alauna joins us to discuss the stresses of living under the COVID-19 pandemic and how to cope with them. How are Democrats handling COVID-19 politics? We're going to talk about that as well. Anyhow, while Dr. Alauna came on for a 10-minute segment on coping with COVID-19, we got 30 minutes of useful, just human information. Dr. Alauna is a board-certified psychiatrist specializing in the diagnosis and treatment of complex psychological trauma and related mental health conditions. She's a former assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Baylor College of Medicine and the Michael E. DeBakey VA Medical Center. She has diagnosed and provided intensive trauma treatment for U.S. military veterans for the last 12 years. But before we get started, you know how I watch those Sunday programs every Sunday, and they ultimately or at some point get me a bit perturbed. And there was no difference in what occurred here. So let me go ahead and play the piece that I have prepared for you, and then we'll go ahead and take it from there. Check this out. On Meet the Press today, I saw an amalgamation of cognitive dissonance. And I tell you, if we don't change this and we don't understand what's going on in this country, and specifically with COVID-19, we are going to be in deep caca. I want you to listen to this little segment here, and then I'll take it on the other side.
On the issue of Sanders dropping out, I want to put up a little chart we've noted of all the ways that Joe Biden has shifted to the left, both in trying to appease Elizabeth Warren and trying to appease Bernie Sanders. He's done so lowering Medicare eligibility age to 60. He's now in favor of that. A Sanders proposal forgiving some tuition-related student debt, increasing bankruptcy protections. Yamiche, is this it for Biden's courtship of the progressive movement, or should we expect him to continue moving left, which is a bit unusual once you've won a nomination? Usually on either party, you usually move to the center, but Trump 4 years ago went right, and it looks like Biden, is he going to keep going left?
It seems like Biden is going to at least be pressured to keep going left, because you have Bernie Sanders and the movement that he's made. He's really had that impact on the Democratic Party. So people expect Joe Biden to carry some of that progressive flag so that he can attract supporters of Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders, when he was dropping out this week, was already calling out in a way that he didn't in 2016, immediately after he dropped out, to tell his supporters, look, we need to get behind Joe Biden, and we need to get behind him fast. So Joe Biden, in order to do that, is likely going to have to maybe pick up some more policies. I just think when we think about Bernie Sanders' campaign, one of the main reasons why he lost this time was the same reason why he lost in 2016, and that was his inability to get support from African Americans. When we look at the disparities when it comes to the virus, that's about systemic racism, food deserts, and the conditions that African Americans have had to live in this country that is largely still segregated.
Somebody said if this pandemic happened a year ago, Bernie Sanders might be the Democratic nominee today. Lonnie Chen, the president has offered mixed messages when it comes to Bernie Sanders. On one hand, he wants the Sanders supporters to vote for him. On the other hand, other members of the Republican Party want to run against Biden as a Sanders socialist wannabe. Is the president hurting the ability of the party to go after Biden from the center?
I don't know that he is. I mean, look, I think the president's always set this up as this sort of capitalism versus socialism kind of contest. So he's going to fit Joe Biden into that box regardless of what the policy is. You know, this is why this notion that, Biden is going to try and move even farther to the left, I just don't see why he would want to do that, because at the end of the day, the key animating factor for Democrats, whether they're progressives to the far left or in the center, is a desire to beat Donald Trump. So going even farther to the left, to me, doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. In terms of for the Republicans, I think that the toughest thing is going to be if Biden continues to hew to a relatively more centrist agenda. It is going to be difficult to put him into the socialist box, obviously in the same way it would have been to put Bernie Sanders there. So the president is going to keep trying to run this frame. I think as long as Joe Biden remains not too far to the left, as long as he doesn't go too far to the left, I think that's going to be a little more challenging as we look toward the fall.
I tell you what, these guys all need to go out there and get a job, because being a talking head is quite interesting. Being an unempathetic talking head is a problem, because here's the deal. This is what they call left. Lowering the eligibility rate of Medicare to age 60. Wow, so what happens to the person that's 59 years old and under and unemployed because of COVID-19, no longer has a job, no longer have insurance? Hey, Medicare for All is looking pretty good for that person right now, and they will no longer consider that to the left. Forgiving some tuition-related student debt. Oh my God, that's a problem. That is so much to the left. Why is Biden moving to the left to take care of that? Well, my God, with no jobs out there, these kids are saddled with loans, and they should, how the hell are they going to pay them, right? And increase bankruptcy protection. Oh my God, COVID-19 is going to have restaurant after restaurant, small shop after small shop. All these businesses are not coming back because they were already on shoestrings budgets. A lot of Americans are going to start changing their behaviors. A lot of people are going to start noticing, oh my God, you mean I can stay home, I can cook, I have a lot more money in the bank, and my credit card bills are lower. So therefore, the speed at which they would spend money at restaurants and all of that, for several reasons, are going to change. One, for their personal economy, and two, for their health, because they will be thinking, with tests not there right now, why am I going to sit in a crowded restaurant? And you know what? A lot of the restaurants that I like are those small rinky-dinky restaurants where you're all close together with other people. Those restaurants are dead. So and by the way, a lot of Republicans, a lot of conservatives own all those restaurants and own all those businesses. And what they're going to realize is all the things that they used to be against now that were left-wing, that were so much to the left, are no longer left-wing. So they're going to want that assistance to help them come back. They're going to want that stipend to help them get through. Guess what those things are called? Progressive ideas. Guess what those things are? Moving to the left. And guess what these pundits are telling Biden? They're telling Biden, oh, you got to stay to the center. Come and get these mythical people that are going to be, even if they were there, they're no longer there, because you know what? A hell of a lot of Americans with small businesses, a hell of a lot of Americans with all these other things are no longer going to be moderates, are no longer going to be centrists, because guess what they need now? They need a helping hand to move forward. So as they give that advice to Biden about staying to the center, guess what Brother Trump is going to do? Brother Trump is a very agile politician, and just like he triangulated Hillary with a lot of policies that he never intended to come through with, but that he said he would, he's going to do exactly the same thing with Biden. He's going to triangulate Biden. He's going to move to the left of Biden, and people who are hurting, genuinely hurting, is going to say, Biden is a staunch centrist, and look at Donald Trump. He wants to help me. People, politicians, the reason why many times we lose is because in the process of building a case, we don't build an honest case for the people. Always keep that North Star towards the people and you will win. Okay, keep that North Star on people and you definitely will win. People need to learn that. Politicians need to learn that. It drives me crazy. Folks, if you're just joining us, I ask you so kindly, please share this on your wall. Please share this on your page. Please tweet this. Please tweet these programs, share these programs, because that is the way we are going to make a difference. As you can see right now, the punditry out there, they live in their own world. America has not yet realized what the outcome of this pandemic looks like. I can already see it. Look, we are not going back to where we were. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of businesses that are not coming back. Folks, if you're just joining us, I ask these so kindly, please share these programs. People need to hear this. People need to hear the truth. It's not coming back, my brothers and my sisters. A lot of businesses are not. And you know why? Because Americans' behavior for the next few months will change. And coming back to that time when we are comfortable being close up on each other in several restaurants, those days are gone. They may slowly come back as we eradicate coronavirus with a vaccine or whatever, but even when that vaccine comes, people are going to be wary. They want to know for sure. that just like smallpox or all these other things, that these vaccines are really going to work. So business as usual will not and cannot occur. And what drives our economy are small businesses. If anybody watched NBC today, we had a lot of reporters out there in the field. They were talking about being on farms, and these farms are turning over turnips, turning over eggplants, turning over green beans right back into the soil because restaurants are not there to buy it, and they can't get it to the grocer, and they can't get it to the food bank. So we have hundreds of thousands of tons of vegetables, hundreds of thousands of tons of milk, and all these things going to waste. Why? Because again, we have for the next distant future change what it looks like. Now, a few days ago, I heard a doctor on. He was talking to Lawrence O'Donnell, and he said something about black people being the ones that are most affected by the coronavirus, and then he gave an advice. And after he gave that advice, I took it a bit further, because it was an advice that, yes, while it was an advice for black, well, I tell you what, let me play that, and then we'll go ahead and take that on the other side. I was listening to Lawrence O'Donnell a few days ago, and there was this doctor that came on, and as you know, with the coronavirus, it is disproportionately killing black people. And this doctor said something that really touched me, right? But it didn't only touch me from the racial disparity that's been occurring with black people dying from the coronavirus. It was, I felt the message was one that should take on a lot more meaning. Let me play it, and then I'll come back to it on the other side.
Speaking to the African American community, as president of the National Medical Association and the chief medical officer here in Watts in California, we need to advocate for ourselves. I keep getting the feeling that we look like helpless or something like that. The NMA has been advocating for decades about this issue with the disparities. We can't just wait for someone to do it for us. For example, advocate by doing in 7 months. There will be an election. Look at the positions of those that are running state, local, federal, and make your determination. We need to advocate for ourselves as patients. If you have hypertension and the doctor says your hypertension is out of control, demand that he gets your hypertension under control. African Americans, if you're on one medication, you're likely not under control. And then support the organizations that have your best interests at heart. That is how we can go past this and not just be a victim.
Dr. Brooks, thank you very much for overriding my questioning and telling the audience what it needs to hear, because this subject is far more complex than any of us here at the Anchor Desk can deal with.
Let's first talk about the black issue, right? It is true that black people get substandard service at hospitals. I've been a victim of it myself. In other words, you go to the hospital, you're definitely not treated the same. Many things are definitely taken for granted, and you have to be an advocate for yourself. I also saw it with my daughter when she got a stroke at the hospital, where she had to be an advocate for herself. Staying on the topic of black people and how they vote as well. If you have a candidate, given the state of healthcare in the black community, that we should have Medicare for all. I went to a Sanders event in Nevada, and this black doctor came out and she said,
a disproportionate amount of poor people of all colors, black people, and brown people who are left uninsured. Call me crazy, but I don't think that's crazy. The only way that I can ensure that all people who look like me will have health insurance that they need is by guaranteeing it for everyone as a human right. Everyone is included. Nobody who looks like me can be excluded.
And the results can definitely be seen across the board with regards to the healthcare that black people get and the results out of that healthcare. Black people allow themselves to be hoodwinked into thinking that somehow Medicare for all was not attainable, not for them, so then they chose a candidate who definitely will not give the type of healthcare requested. That said, I want to expand on this message. You have to be an advocate for yourself. Being an advocate for yourself, it doesn't matter on what subject. Women have to be advocate for themselves to ensure that no man has control over their bodies. You cannot vote for candidates who are wishy-washy on that specific issue if it matters for you. If you are a student, you have to vote for a candidate who is going to make your life better as a student with a heavy debt load. You should not be supporting a candidate that says, oh, maybe so. If you are a mother, a father that cannot go to work because you cannot get child care, you cannot vote for candidates who are saying, we can't afford that. If you are a person living in the middle of the ghetto, living on the mountaintop in Appalachia where the carbon is rolling down the hills, which is polluting your streams, you cannot vote for candidates who says we want to get rid of regulations that will then pollute the water you drink and the air you breathe. You have to be your own advocate. One of the problems in America is we have assigned advocacy to others for us. We have allowed others to negotiate our own well-being. We have not become our own advocate in a plethora of different issues that affect us all. So if we want to succeed going forward in 2020, we have to remember to be our own advocate, irrespective of the narrative coming from the top. Advocate for the issues that have material impact on our own lives. We do that, and then we'll start to see change. Absolutely. So I have a caller on the line, and I think I recognize that number. Welcome aboard to Politics Done Right. Who do I have the honor of speaking with?
Hello, it is Ashley Willies.
Oh, wow. My daughter calling into my show from D.C. Talk to me, my dear daughter.
I know there's a lag on Facebook, so I was just more speaking to what the president of the NMA said. And I guess to tag along to what you said about black people being their own advocate. And I know I think you told the story of probably me in the hospital, during my stroke.
Right.
But what I
you
also
had to
wanted
be your
to
own
add,
advocate. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So what I also wanted to add is that you were saying, I think, that, if black people have to stop putting the control in other people's hands.
Right.
And I just want to add a caveat to that, saying that I don't have numbers to back this, but there's a good proportion of people, of black people, of brown people, who are so busy trying to survive that they're honestly distracted from other things that would help them advocate for themselves. I see this usually at school. I go to Howard Med, and so it's a historically black college. So on top of that, you have loyalty from black people in the city. DC being, of course, the city that used to have the most black people in the country. And then you also have the patient population that my school provides. All of them are poor. I don't think we've ever seen, it is rare that we see people who are just honestly above the line, who are just doing fine. And they're so busy just trying to get on with their daily lives that anything that requires an extra step is honestly exhausting. And I think it's by design. The voter suppression, right? Mm-hmm. So I forgot which state it was. I think it was either Wisconsin, or I think it's Wisconsin.
It's actually Wisconsin. That they forced them to vote even though we have a pandemic.
Right. And so that means that the people in suburbia who are easily isolated are able to go out and vote, or they have a mail-in order because they know about it. So they can vote, and that's whose views and whose vote is going to essentially result and be shown. Whereas people who are in the, more crowded areas can't, because there's a stay-at-home order, right? So we're in more crowded areas. So I think that, yes, black people do have to be advocates for themselves, but it's really hard. I'm just saying, devil's advocate, essentially. It's really hard to do so when you're so worried about so many other things. It's stressful. And so it feels kind of like, when when Republicans say, oh my gosh, why can't you just do it yourself? Right? Well, I shouldn't have to do it myself. I shouldn't have to do that. We've been fighting since, the year 1500 over here. So it's kind of like exhausting to the point. So I just want to put that viewpoint out there.
No,
I'm not
actually,
disagreeing
I am
with you.
with you, and
I'm just saying.
I am not disputing what you're saying at all because I wholeheartedly believe, not only believe, what you're saying is actually very true. And I think, I don't know if you heard the black doctor that I interviewed in Nevada. She was actually giving a speech where she was talking about the plight of black women proper and the reason why she supported Medicare for all, because at that point, everybody's included in Medicare for all, right? And you don't have to go through the machinations that people of color have, jobs that don't necessarily give them the types of insurance that the population at large has.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, I didn't see that. So to answer your question, no, I did not see that. Sorry.
yeah, okay. No, that's okay that
But
you
yes,
didn't see it.
I agree.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
what your point is well taken, that people are so busy. I tell you what, Ashley, I tell a story about you driving through Appalachia, Ohio, and these areas, and seeing the condition of people. Whenever people see downtrodden conditions, they think about black people in the ghettos. Well, you actually saw that in you
What?
actually
Yeah.
saw that.
No, I saw. Yeah. So last time, can I tell this story? Because I literally told this story 2 days ago. No joke. So I had never been to the states of, I think it's like West Virginia, Ohio, and it's a tri-state area. I forgot the other state. I think I may be wrong, but I'm not really sure. But especially West Virginia, because that's where me and my classmates stayed. It's a completely different world. I don't know, I didn't feel like I was essentially in the United States. Like I knew I was in the United States, but it felt otherworldly. And what was really wild is that West Virginia, honestly, is gorgeous. Like it's tucked with all these mountains and it's so green and it's lush and it seems very rich. However, everyone who lives there, I swear, it feels like everybody was poor. It felt like everybody was poor and it was so crazy. And then on top of that, all the factories, I don't know if it was cold, I couldn't tell you because the factories that we drove by weren't really in use,
Hmm.
but they were all next door to the poor populations. On top of that, we for the job that both of us were doing, we had to go visit a family physician who is from West Virginia, and he went to medical school in West Virginia, and on purpose came back to that area because that county that we were in had the highest rate of HIV/AIDS in the entire country. So high, there was an outbreak. They called it HIV outbreak. It was so bad that the CDC was actually in that county, I think, a few months before to try and stop the spread. And it wasn't due to sexual contact. It was due to IV drug use.
Now,
And so it's crazy.
the reason I have always told
But
that
then the
story,
face of HIV/AIDS is black people.
exactly the reason I tell the people the story about you finding a different reality in Appalachia is that when we watch TV, the impression that everybody wants to give is that poverty looks like black and brown people, when there's a large poverty in Appalachia that is way ahead, much larger than the combined black and brown real poverty. And I don't know if you listen to the part of the shows where I always say, when we unite the ghettos, the barrios, and Appalachia, we would have solved the problems because these folks would have realized they have more in common than not, and nobody would then be able to use them as pawns against each other.
Yeah, that would be a great world.
And you know what? It's going to be done. But my dear, beautiful daughter, I have a 30-minute interview with Dr. Alauna, another doctor.
I am okay. I am so sorry.
No, actually, you are not. I enjoyed this call from, you know what it feels like when a dad is listening to his daughter giving some commentary on his show. It is like, great. Anyway, my daughter is in med school in D.C. What are you, third year, right, Boo?
I'm a third year, and we're currently quarantined.
And you're
So
quarantined,
hopefully I'll see
see?
a hospital at some point.
You stay your butt quarantined. Do you hear me?
Yeah, yes, I shall. Social
All right.
distancing, all about it.
Thank you so kindly for calling in, Ash. I'll talk to you later.
All right, talk to you later. Bye, love you.
Love you. Bye-bye. Okay, folks, I want you to listen to this interview that I did with Dr. Alauna, and I enjoyed it. It was supposed to be 10 minutes long, and instead it went for about half hour or so. Good interview, and then we'll continue on the other side for a short pickup thereafter. Welcome to another segment of Politics Done Right. I'm here with Dr. Alauna. Dr. Alauna, did I say that correctly?
You said it with the Spanish version of it, but yeah, Dr. Alauna.
Dr. Alauna. Well, excuse my intonation,
Yeah.
my accent, or whatever. But anyway, she specializes in diagnosis and treatment of complex psychological trauma and related mental health conditions. She's done a whole lot of work with veterans. You know how these veterans came back into town? Well, she straightened quite a few of them out. Dr. Alauna, how are you doing today?
That's a good question. How am I doing today? That's actually a more serious question than most people realize.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I can only go, how am I doing? But I'm not doing okay.
Okay, tell me.
I cried real tears this morning trying to figure out how to juggle my kids' education and some of the expectations that the school is requesting, and also running my businesses and, helping take care of people and all of those things. So yeah, no, I'm not okay. I'm sure there's probably a lot of other people who are not okay too.
Right. Well, one of the reasons I had you on is, I go through my feed on Facebook and I go to different sites to see what I'm covering for the day, for the week, etc. And you made mention about people being at home and the coronavirus. I don't remember exactly what you were saying, but since I had heard you before, I said, you know what? The best person to have on right now, given that people are going through hell at home, just like you were talking about your own kids, they're going through hell at home with the solitude, they're going through hell with the depression. Tell me, when you see numbers like this, Alauna, when you see numbers like this, that is scary. So people are home because they're running from numbers like this.
Yeah.
How should people cope?
You will have, you can have moments where you will feel very sad, very upset, very distraught. There are lots of people, you put those numbers up there. People have had people that have died, and they are not able to be with their family members sometimes in their last moments, and can't even be with them even in the funeralizing or memorializing process. So it is 100% okay to have controlled releases of those emotions, or when you're feeling pent up or in a lot of pain, to acknowledge that and say to yourself, it's okay for me to feel this way because I'm a functional, normal brained human being. Like, I think just acknowledgement of those things can help them pass, and you just allow it to come in, and then you allow it to leave. Emotions don't last forever, but a lot of times because we don't know how to deal with them very well, when they hit, we're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm going to die. Like literally your emotions can make you feel like you are going to drop dead. Like that's how intense it can be for people who have panic attacks or people who have depression, and there were people struggling before. So now you have even more people who are in that space. So that's, one, just being kind to yourself about the fact that you're having the emotions, and two, taking breaks, like give yourself time to go outside, take a walk, do meditation, doing things that make you feel better. Take a hot bath, soak in the tub, do little things for yourself, because honestly what happens is that most of us don't have good coping skills, or at least healthy coping skills. We drink, we smoke, we, maybe have sex, we watch TV, we, avoid. A lot of us like to do a lot of things that help us avoid those emotions. But that can be catastrophic, right? Because if I'm in this space where now I don't have, now I'm quarantined, I may not have access to my previous coping mechanisms, or maybe I'm overusing the things that previously might have just been helpful. Like sometimes maybe we were binge eating. Now I hear so many people binge eating because of the stress. So really getting in touch with your body and like asking yourself questions like, am I hungry or am I eating because I'm stressed? And I need something to do, or I want that sugar rush or that, whatever kind of rush I'm looking for that will help distract me from how I'm feeling.
So now you mentioned something, and I think that happens to all of us, right? Okay, I'm sitting down here, I'm in whatever condition, so I just run ahead and go get me some nuts, or I go get me a piece of cake, or I go get, how do you tell yourself not to do that?
Well, I think this is the reason why I teach about these primitive brain systems that drive a lot of our behaviors, because your brain reward system, for example, is your addiction system, your dopamine system. And so everybody has one, and everybody's dopamine system is hopping right now, right? So, when I'm, 12 o'clock at night, just finished binging my Netflix and, going to then I'm like, what can I do?
Something, right? Absolutely.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden I'm standing in front of the refrigerator. That's my dopamine system driving my behavior. And that, the urge to act or do something, it's like I could reach to the left and I could, open the freezer and pull out that ice cream, or I could reach to the right and open that refrigerator and pull out those carrots.
Right.
But,
the carrots, the ice cream kind of tastes better than the carrots now.
But I mean, there's fruit, thankfully we food supply is still doing okay. We need to pay attention to the fact that our food supply is being threatened by the lack of health care and lack of attention to the people who work to keep our food supplies. But, beyond that, it's really about being able to put your body in neutral, just like a car. You can get in there, car's running, but, you have to think about, where am I going? Where do I want to go? Do I want to go to the version of this where, in 3 months from now, I'm 50 pounds heavier? Or do I want to go to the version of this that, I may be gaining a few pounds because I'm being reasonable with myself, but sometimes I do just make myself grab those carrots. And so it's really about wrestling yourself into a moderation that you can live with, because at the end of the day, you have to live the consequences. That's what I mean that's why I call us creators.
Right.
And why we're not taught how to have that awareness of how the animal part of us can really take you places, and you don't even realize that that's where you're headed until you get there.
Right. Now, let me ask you something. This sort of on the subject as well. Is what we're going through right now, can it be conducive to sort of a PTSD as well, or are they different mechanisms?
It's the same mechanism. There will be people who have PTSD. There are people who have PTSD right now from this.
Because of this.
Because of this. And also consider that we're dealing with the enemy. When I say enemy, I won't even call it an enemy, but we're dealing with a force that is invisible.
Right.
And so that will, when it's time to, quote, get back out there, what people are not accounting for is the trauma that is being induced by having an invisible entity that is causing harm, right? So people are not just going to we know people are mixing and mingling now because they think that they are somehow not subject to the rules of this virus. But in a couple of weeks, they're going to be learning that very, directly within their own communities.
Are you still seeing a lot of, because like where I'm at, people, it's almost desolate. Are you still seeing a lot of people acting as if it's nothing?
Not in my vicinity. I'm not seeing anything because I'm in my house.
You're at home.
I'm like, yep, do what you do. Okay. But as far as, yes, there are still a lot of people who are just waking up to the reality that this is a real thing and that it's not a hoax. and that it is actually that is a very potentially deadly and devastating illness. So there are some people who are still not there yet, that are just operating in their little bubble. And, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So that creates a lot of confusion. And, we know that the African American communities are being hit particularly hard.
I wanted, and actually I have a specific question about that. We continuously seem to be at the brunt of these diseases affecting us more than anyone else. And it's not genetic, is it? It's mostly socioeconomic.
Yes. It's mostly socioeconomic. It is the byproduct of years of stress and trauma and neglect and intentional systematic targeting of our communities that piles up into physical manifestation. So just sort of taking a little piece, like we were given the scraps of the animals. So we made those animals taste amazing. Throw all kinds of butter and salt and sugar and whatever you can on there. You cook all your vegetables in the animal meat and what have you.
I want to be talking about chitlins now.
Well, I mean, not necessarily chitlins, but I'm just thinking about in general, like the historic way that we have learned to cook and make soul food and the staples of some of our diet. And so then you fast forward that into, now you have taste buds that have been programmed for generations to eat in a certain way or to appreciate food in a certain way. And you have recipes and you have...
I see. Right. You're saying that there's a historical reason why the bad eating, there's an historical reason. It's not really, if your culture is accustomed to eating all these greens and so forth, great. But slaves only could eat these leftovers. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm just using that as a small example of how we have not addressed core factors that play a role in why we manifest certain conditions, and so when you have systematic redlining so that the communities are clustered and you keep them less, like African Americans are more likely to be in service roles, like the grocery store clerk.
More exposure to the corona.
Exactly. So you have more exposure. We're more likely to be the garbage and waste carriers who are transmitting all of this extra, potentially contaminated, waste from people's homes. So there's, we're more likely to be in janitorial services where we're doing the cleaning. So, it's very easy to say that, they're just not healthy or they're just not healthy. And but without looking exactly, and that's their fault. But that also disregards 400 years of history that says that we have a huge systematic inequality that is continuously feeding into the factors that make us manifest these health conditions. Stress in itself. Now it's like people are starting to actually realize how stressful it can be, even just to be home with your kids, right?
I didn't mean this portion to be political at all, but I'm going to tell you a little story that I've started telling for a long time. And I know you know Appalachia. I always equate Appalachia and the ghettos, right? And what I show is that if you take a look at the socioeconomic conditions in Appalachia and you take the socioeconomic conditions in the ghetto, what you find is the same behaviors. You find all these things that are equal: stress levels, blood pressure, all these kinds of things, which, if we had a media that really told the story, they would tell the story in that manner so that when there are, let's say, certain type of preferential treatments in a city is made for the underclass, which generally affects, very few poor whites, but a large bunch of blacks and Latinos, they would not look at it like, it's some sort of a giveaway. They would look at it like, well, we need to do that for Appalachia as well, because they are going through the same conditions that these folks are.
Absolutely. I believe we have what I term it social or societal traumatic stress syndrome. Societal traumatic stress syndrome. Not post-traumatic, because we're not posted.
We're still living it.
We're still in it.
Yes.
And we have not dealt with the consequences that happen when you dehumanize another person, right? Because if I look at another human being and I start classifying or labeling them based on what I see on the outside in their packaging, right? I go, they're black, they're female, they're, X, Y, and Z. Those labels in our minds cause us to interpret the other person as other, right? Like they're different than me.
Right.
They're in the other tribe. And so I just give just a little bit less about them, right? Because they're not in my tribe. And that mentality has led to a lot of separation thinking when we need to be thinking in terms of interconnected. They're all spiritual beings having a human experience, and 99% the same biologically, genetically, build all of that. There's like literally 0.1%.
You know what?
Our genetic makeup that makes us different.
You know what is so interesting about that? Because I use this in my narrative as well. In as much we are maybe 99% the same. The thing that somebody purportedly of a different race could be genetically sufficiently equal to another one that they can transfer their kidneys, and a blood sister couldn't, should have already extinguished all those types of separations, if you will. I was in Nevada a few months ago campaigning for a particular person, and there was this doctor there was explaining why it is we needed to have Medicare for all. And she said, and this was a black doctor, and she said, as a black woman, I am stressed out more than anyone else. I have to worry about about my sons being killed, my husband being killed by cops is what she meant. I have to stress out about not being able to wear my hair the way I want to wear my hair on the job. And she gave a litany of things that puts a target on her, if you will. Okay? And after she was done with that, she said, and one of the reasons I want Medicare for all is if it's already for everybody, I can't be excluded for all these things you're asking me to go through. And when she made, I put it in a video yesterday as well. When she went through that analogy, I was like, perfectly said.
Yeah. That definitely is a reality that we have not accepted yet. But I also think that's because we stink at empathy, and
exactly.
Empathy, lack of empathy, I believe, it causes mental illness, because it does not allow you to see the experience and the perspective of the other creator that you are interacting with. So if you are unable or unwilling to empathize with another person, you are going to be operating in this little bitty bubble with your version of reality, and you're literally unable to appreciate the experience of another human being, and that's a very primitive state of operating.
Dr. Alauna, you are a psychiatrist. I got to ask you this. You're the one who should be answering this question, because I talk about empathy all the time, about people not having empathy, why or whatever. But I'm not really qualified to get into the brain portion. Why is it that we find some of the least empathetic people are those who need empathy the most for their own conditions?
I believe that the reason for that is that, well, I think I sort of touched on it. When a person is lacking empathy, they're operating in a very primitive state. For me, that means that the parts of their brain that I talk about, like their amygdala, the part that creates your emotions and all those huge, powerful urges and moves you from here, there, left, and right, that means that it's running the show for them. It's dictating how they interpret the world. It's a really horrible. I mean, I think about some of the way that our politicians think and operate, and you're like, man, you must be miserable. Or when I use empathy to think about what the experience of being, President Trump would be, that's hell. That's an awful experience to be in his mind and in his reality. If just looking at how he functions.
That is interesting that you said that, right? Because a lot of people get on my case. I do this show, and people would call in, and sometimes every so often I'll get the good old N-word called out, and the first thing I would look at them and it's like, you must be having a bad day.
Like, oh, baby.
Yeah, I would tell them like, oh, you having a bad, I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do for you or whatever? And some people, and you probably should know a whole lot of those as well, would get pissy mad at me for not reacting. And I'm like, I know who I am.
Yeah.
I am genuinely sorry for those folks who have to go there. And I mean empathetically sorry, because it's like that you have to go and, I don't even know what the hell that is like, right?
Yeah. It's a lot. There's a lot of hatred and fear and a lot of pain in people who function that way. And you can see it and hear it when they open their mouths to talk. So, I think that for me, I experience, that's the reason why I teach empathy skills, and that I believe that empathy skills will heal the trauma that the human species is experiencing. And I teach it with the LOVE acronym, LOVE. Listen and look with suspended judgment, meaning take your little bubble and, just for a second, we know you think you know, but, pause on that. O, observe the emotions in yourself and the other person or all parties involved. V, validate the differing and equal perspectives of each person. And E, express yourself skillfully, meaning using skills to recognize, like when you're feeling intensely emotional, that's your amygdala driving the bus, point blank period. What comes out of your mouth and what you say, the automatic default mode is my primitive brain is talking for me. These are not my best words. This is not my best brain that's dictating I'm handling this situation. And so you always will have better, but you have to recognize, like when those people are getting mad at you, that's their emotions and their amygdala that, you should do this, you should do that. All that judgment, all of that reaction, it serves a purpose to drive people and fuel their behavior, but it also creates a lot of internal roller coasters, a lot of pain, a lot of negative outcomes that we actually don't want. So learning how to have awareness of your emotions and control of yourself and your animal is pivotal for us, but we don't have an education system that gives any of that information. Like, where do you get a dedicated education about that?
We're in an economic system that doesn't have time or reason or motive to do that. But Dr. Alauna, we actually went beyond our time, but it was just fun talking. So here's what I'd like to ask you to do. Okay. Give a positive affirmation to all those folks that are locked up in their homes right now, but most importantly, give a word to those heroes that are out there in the grocery stores, our garbage people, our doctors, our nurses that are out there fighting the line as we complain about being locked up and cooped up at home, running from that invisible virus.
Well, I would just say that if whatever you're doing, it's good enough. And I know that you may be looking at it like, this is not good enough, I should be doing more, or I should be doing something differently. But all of those shoulds, when you're shoulding yourself, you are creating more pain, you're creating more trauma, because you're measuring yourself against a reality that's not happening. So it's literally just adding pressure and adding pain to the experience. So I would just learn to say to myself, it's good enough, because that will, if right now what you've been doing is laying on your couch and crying and eating a bunch of ho-hos, like that, I mean, you're having a real trauma. There is something that is truly leading to grief and powerful, painful emotions, and just acknowledging that, validating it, and saying it will pass. But you have to now learn to pull yourself out of that and learn to day by day just put some sort of organization together. This is a long haul thing. This thing is not just going away. We have to learn how to adjust and adapt. And so anything that humans decide they want to do, if they're physically capable of doing it, and then we put our minds to it over and over again in practice, we figure it out. So we will make it through this. We will figure it out, and we will have a better society for it. But we have to put ourselves in gear and learn how to control ourselves and educate ourselves about all of these invisible things that we have not given attention to before.
Folks, visit Dr. Alauna's site at dralauna.com, where she has her website and, of course, her Facebook page. I believe her Facebook page is the same. It's Facebook.com/DARALAUNA. So it's Facebook.com/DrAlauna. And I said the Alauna this time. That's the reason I said it this time. And please visit her website at dralauna.com. Dr. Alauna, trauma psychiatrist, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right and for giving those soothing words to our listeners.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
I'm Egberto Willies, host of Politics Done Right, an independent news program. I post several news videos of interest every day. I ask you so kindly to subscribe to my channel, and please leave me some comments. Thank you very much. Well, folks, that was Dr. Alauna. I hope you visit our website at dralauna.com. Anyhow, we are at the end of the show at 57, so I have to do my little quickie right here, folks. Please remember, this is a call-in show. Not only that, this is a show that needs your support. So please, folks, consider going to store.politicsdoneright.com. Again, that is store.politicsdoneright.com, and support the program. This is how you know that song that goes, this is how we do it. This is how we're going to make a real change in this country if we continue to have independent media. But what we really, really, really would like to have from you are subscriptions. So if you want to subscribe, go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. And that's right there on your screen right now. Patreon, patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Become a subscriber, become a member. If you take a look at our newsletters, you know what we do at our newsletters? We always like to reward, highlight those folks who become part of our membership, part of our program. So they get positions in our newsletter. This newsletter that went out today, let me give an example. The newsletter on the screen. We send out these newsletters on a daily basis. Actually, this is not the one that I wanted to put out there. So let me see if I can find that newsletter that I want to go to. We put out these newsletters very frequently, generally one per show or something like that. And what we try to do is we try to highlight all of you who are really a part of making us who we are. This is an example of, this is the last one I sent out, I believe. And there was one of our supporters that I have in there, and I give a little narrative about her. Several of you have been already featured in our newsletter, because you know what? We want to have some way to give in something back as well. So you give us your support, we give you some support as well. So don't forget, go to patreon.com, patreon.com/politicsdoneright to become a subscriber, to become a member. And you can go to paypal.me. That's paypal.me/politicsdoneright. Supporters are the ones who are going to make this country change. And again, if you want a good-looking T-shirt, a mug, or something, go to store.politicsdoneright.com. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! I'm Egberto Willies, host of Politics Done Right, an independent news program. I post several news videos of interest every day. I ask you so kindly to subscribe to my channel, and please leave me some comments. Thank you very much.